Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of my channel. Today we are going to be tackling the TryHackme Active Directory basics, where we will deep dive into the ins and outs of what Active Directory is. So now, if you guys haven't already, go ahead and start up your start box as well as your machine as we prepare to dive right in. Sorry, I'm a little bit OCD when it comes to my monitors, so we're going to start our attack box as we allow and wait for the machine to go through. We're gonna go ahead and read through. This is gonna be I'm just gonna section this off into a few lessons in one and a few lessons in another. So this way we're not, just running long on time. So, introduction. What is Active Directory? Well, Active Directory is the backbone component of the corporate world. It simplifies management of devices and users within a corporate environment. In this room, we're going to do a deep dive into the essential components of Active Directory. So we're going to go over what Active Directory is, what Active Directory domain is, what the components of Active Directory domain. We're going to go over forest, we're going to go domain trusts, and so much more. So without further ado, we're just going to start this one right up, and we're going to go into the idea of what Windows domains are. So this is a very simple concept. So picture yourself administering small business networks with only 5 computers. Which have 5 employees. In such a tiny network, you can go ahead and configure each computer separately without much of a problem. You will manually log into each computer, create users, and specific configurations for each employee accounts. If a user stops working, you will probably just go to their place and fix the computer on site. And that sounds like a very easy, relaxed lifestyle. But now let's suppose you have 157 users, computers, and 320 different users located across 4 different sites. So you would still be able to would you still be able to manage the computer as a separate entity, manually configuring policies for each of the users across the network, and provide on-site support for everyone? The answer is highly likely no. All right, and that's pretty basic idea of what Active Directory can do. It allows you to make a lot of configurations throughout the domain without having to be in a physical location, and it allows for more configurations, security policies, adding users, deleting users, and it just makes your business a little bit more manageable. All right. To overcome some of these limitations, we could use a Windows domain. Simply put, a Windows domain is a group of computers or users under the administration of a given business. The main idea behind a domain is to centralize the administration of common components of a Windows computer network in a single repository called Active Directory. The server that runs and the Active Directory service is usually called the domain controller. It's actually always called the domain controller. Who we fooling? So these are all the services that can run on it. You have your workstations, your file servers, your database server, and your desktops all being controlled by the domain controller. You'll have group policies that will be worked through. You'll have different types of objects that could be worked through, but this is typically your domain. So it allows for centralized identity management. So all users across the network can be configured from Active Directory with minimal effort. It also allows for managing security policies. So if you can configure security policies directly from Active Directory and apply them to users and computers across the network as needed. So for a real world example would be a school or a university, where you will often be provided with a username and password that you can use any of the computers available on campus. Your credentials are valid for all the machines because whenever you input them on a machine, it will forward them to the authentication process back to the Active Directory, where your credentials can be checked. So thanks to Active Directory, your credentials don't need to exist on every machine in every possible spot within the network. So Active Directory is also a component that allows schools and universities to restrict you from accessing the control panel of your school university. So policies can usually be deployed throughout the network so that you don't have administrative policies and procedures and privileges over all of those computers. So basically, welcome to THC Inc. During this task, we'll assume the role of a new admin. As our first task, we've been asked to review the current domain of THM local. To do so, and to do some additional configurations, you will have admin credentials over a pre-configured DC to do these tasks. So if you're going to be using your own domain, or if you're going to be using your own computer, you could be doing this via RDP with these credentials and this IP address. So answering the questions, we're moving right along. In a Windows domain, credentials are stored in a central repository called, well, you guessed it, Active Directory. Directory. All right. The server in charge of Active Directory is called the domain controller. We know that from our reading just a little bit ago. Controller. All right, moving on right along. Now, Active Directory, the core of the Windows domain is the Active Directory Domain Systems, or ADDS. This service acts as a catalog that holds the information of the objects that exist on the network. Amongst the many objects supported by the AD, we have users, groups, machines, printers, shares, and many others. So let's look at some of them. Now, users are pretty common, right? They are mostly known people, or as we are going to read here, users are one of the objects known as security principals, meaning they can be authenticated by domain and it can be assigned privileges over a resource. So you have your security principal, and you have your object that has its own security rules that are allowed to be accessing and manipulating resources that are on the network. So it can be acted upon resources within the network. Yeah. So users can be used to represent two types of entities: people and services. So people will obviously fall into users category, and services could be falling into things like MySQL, ISS, IIS. Every single service requires a user to run, but the service users are different from the regular users, and they will only have privileges needed to run specific tasks. So it's sort of a preventative measure, so you don't actually over authenticate and make changes that you're not supposed to make. So machines are another type of object within Active Directory. So for every computer that joins Active Directory's domain, a machine object will be created. So machines are considered security principals as well, and they are assigned an account just like a regular user. This account has somewhat limited rights within the domain. You don't need a printer having access to user credentials. So the machine themselves are local administrators. So the machines themselves are local administrators on the assigned computers, and they generally are not supported by access or accessed by everyone except for the computer itself. But with any account, if you have the password, you can still log into it. So no machine account passwords are automatically rotated out and will generally compromise within and are generally compromised. Compromised? I think it's supposed to be composed of 120 random characters. So identifying machine accounts is relatively easy. They follow a specifically naming scheme. The machine name account is the computer's name followed by a $sign. So for example, machine would be DC1. So how it would be outputted would be DC1 plus the $sign. So moving on to the security groups. If you're familiar with Windows, you probably know that you define user groups to assign access rights to files or other resources within the group instead of a single user. This allows for better manageability, as it can add users to an existing groups, and they will all automatically inherit all of the group's privileges. Security groups are also considered security principals, and therefore can have the principals over resources on the network. So coming into here, we're going to show you the server manager, which is right here, right there. and we are going to go through some of the inherited groups. Groups can have both users and machines as members. If needed, group can include other groups as well. So down here is is your security group and your description. So your domain admins, they have all the privileges. They're the ones that are allowed to assign machines, services, users, and so forth. Then you have the server operators, which are the domain control. Users in this group can administer the DC controls, but they cannot change any administration or admin group memberships. Then you have backup operators in this group's allowed to access any file, ignoring their permissions, and they are used to perform backups data on the computer. So then you have account operators, domain users. Operators or users in this group can create and modify other accounts within the domain. Domain users are these exist in the account. These domain users include all existing user accounts in the domain. And then you have the domain computers, these are the machines that are on the domain, and the domain controllers, which are all the existing DCs on the domain. So coming in here, we have all the tools. This is where everything's going to be listed within the Active Directory domain. These would be how you would set up all your services and so forth. So we're going to come back up here, and we're going to go to users and computers for this demonstration purposes. To configure users, groups, and machines in Active Directory, we will need to log into the DC and run Active Directory users and computers, just like we've done. All right, so we open up the window where we can see the hierarchy of users, computers, groups that exist in the domain. So these are your parent directories, and these are your your child. So you have your parent and your child accounts. Okay. These objects are called organized units, or OUs, which are container objects that allow you to classify users and machines. So it's just a way to organize your files and folders, who has what and what permissions, and where are they going to stay within here. So if you have THM as a parent folder, this is what you're going to be working with, and these are all your subcategories that are inside your THM folder. So pretty straightforward, right? So these people are in the sales department. They likely have different set of policies applied to them. You're not going to have the same with marketing, HR, or IT as you would in sales. So therefore, you would have different permissions throughout the environment. So checking our machines, we can see there's already OU called THM, which have 5 child IUs, right? IT, management, marketing, R&D, sales. This is very typical to see the OUs mimic the business structure as it follows the efficiency deploying baseline policies that apply to the entire department. Remember that while this would be expected model for most of them, you define them, your OUs arbitrarily. So you can feel free to right click, and you can create a new OU and call it Studio Students. Let's see, so new OU. All task. Rename, refresh properties. All right, so new OU and call it shared folder, user, organizational user, and we're just going to call this one students. All right, and there it is. So it's that simple. There's nothing in there just now, but we would populate it with the users and groups as we go along. So if you open any of the OUs, we can see all the subfolders and categorize the people that are in, the subfolders. You can also do the reset. You can also go through all their stuff, and you can go see all the permissions that you yourself have. You can copy, you can add to the group, disable the account, reset the password, move, open the home page, etc., all tasks you can add to a group. So this is where these things get really interesting for a hacker or a threat actor, because once you attack the Active Directory and you have all the information right here in front of you. Users, your organization, the permissions, you can assign them to however you want. So very, very high value to target whenever it comes to basically any attacker or any pen test or any kind of like hack. This is something that somebody wants to get into. So it's very important that your DCs, your Active Directories, are following best practices as you go along. So you already noticed that there's already these 4 categories that are already pre-built. So let's just go through them. Pre-built is contain groups available to any Windows host. Click on it. These are all the ones. So you'll have certificate authentication services. You'll have all these things that are inherent, that are already built onto the Windows computer. So going down to computer, you have all the computers that are already linked onto this DC. Pretty straightforward. Same thing with domain controllers. Is the domain controller that's associated with this DC. Users, I can't get more straightforward than that. These are all the users that are on DC, and you will have your managed services accounts. So these are the services that a managed service be able to link their stuff right here. So now we go into the security groups versus the OUs. So security groups or organizational users. You're probably wondering why we have both groups and OUs. While both are used to classify users and computers, their purpose are entirely different. OUs are handy for applying policies to users and computers, which include specific configurations that pertain to a set of users depending on their particular role in the enterprise. Remember, a user can be a member of a single OU, as it would make sense. It would make sense for them to try to apply to different user sets of policies to a single user. So that makes a lot of sense, right? If you wouldn't have a regular user having admin policies and privileges, you would just have one having one or the other. So security groups, on the other hand, would be the opposite. So this would be the administrators or the sysadmins or network admins, allowing people to have permissions as they go through. So security groups, on the other hand, are used to grant permissions over resources. For example, you use groups if you want to allow some users to access a shared folder or a network printer. All right, so pretty straightforward. Not really much to there. So going to the questions, which group normally administrates all computers and resources in a domain? When I say that was a domain controller? A domain admin. Sorry. My brain is fried. So domain admins. All right. What would be the name of the machine account associated with the machine Tom's PC? Well, now we already know Tom's PC is the name of the machine. However, we set this a little earlier when we looked at this. All right. Identifying machines are relatively easy. We want to find the machine itself. The machine account name appears, computer name followed by the $sign. So it would be Tom's PC plus the $sign. Let's see, Tom Tech PC plus the $sign. All right. Suppose our company creates a new department for quality assurance. What type of containers should we use to group all quality assurance? So this is pretty simple. So this would be just an organizational user, as we've gone over. Organizational units. All right. And that's where we're going to be laying off today. So that's I can keep this video relatively short. In the next one, we're going to do 4, 5, and 6. And in the third video, we're going to continue on with 7, 8, and 9. Conclusions are usually gimmies, so I usually save these for a day that I need a streak, just to kind of keep my THM streak going. But yeah, so that's that. That's the very, very basics of Active Directory. As we continue to dive deeper into this in the next upcoming videos, I thank you guys so much for being here. Please like, comment, subscribe.